to extend a heartfelt thank you to Governor Shapiro for visiting us today and listening to our students. We would also like to thank Representative Mike Schlossberg for connecting us to this opportunity that has allowed for our student voices to be heard in such an intimate setting. Parkland High School has a great staff who work tirelessly to address mental health needs. Our SAP team, for instance, provides mentoring services for academic and social emotional difficulties, mental health assessments, and referrals to outpatient medical health professionals. Our school's counselors and psychologists support students' social and emotional difficulties. We partner with our local hospitals to provide psychotherapy for students who need it. We have crisis teams that support students experiencing acute mental health difficulties. We are incredibly fortunate to have all of those resources available to our students. But our needs are consistent and growing. We constantly are being told that our hospitals don't have enough psych beds, that there are not enough therapists and psychiatrists, that their wait lists are too long, and that health insurance does not cover students' therapy. These are issues that an increased investment by our state government may be able to help our students. We need to be vigilant as a community to monitor youth mental health. We as a community need to ask questions and show care and concern for one another. Parents need our support, and we need theirs. We need to help parents learn how to navigate the challenges that our children face. As a group, we heard today, there are many stressors that our young people are dealing with. We sincerely appreciate that the government took time to listen to a diverse group of youth here at Parkland High School. We are Parkland proud of everyone who took part in our session today. To the students, your voices have been heard, and we thank you for your courage to talk about this difficult topic. Thank you, everyone, for being here today and for showing that you care and have concern for our teens. At this point, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Mike Schlossberg, our state representative from the 132nd District of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, to the podium. Mr. Schlossberg.
Let me start by sincerely thanking all of you for your welcome, and let me most importantly thank the students who were here and who spoke earlier today. The only way that we can truly and comprehensively attack mental illness and make an impact in the lives of students is if they tell us what they need. To the students who are all here, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Many of you who are in the audience have heard me speak time and time again about my own struggles with depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. Believe it or not, despite being a politician, I speak about those not to talk about myself, but to raise a broader point. We continue to have real challenges in terms of the honesty, the openness, and the candor of people being willing to speak about mental illness. While this generation, while your generation has made tremendous strides, you still wouldn't talk about taking antidepressants in the same breath that you would talk about taking cholesterol medication or heart medication. And that needs to change. The only way that will change is if the voice of our youngest generations, of people in high school right now, people like my son who's 12 or my daughter who's 10, are willing to speak about their own struggles. But your voice means nothing if people in power don't actually do more. The governor's budget calls for $500 million in investment in youth mental health over the next 5 years. That is massive. And it represents a significant change in how we have treated and funded mental illness. It's also not enough. Frankly, our counties desperately need assistance in order to create more hospital beds, to better fund programs, and I know the governor has proposed restoring $20 million to funding that was cut more than a decade ago. We also need to do a better job of funding 988, the suicide prevention hotline, so that those of you who do need help can actually talk to a real person and potentially get the help that you need. Finally, we have $100 million in federal spending that's currently sitting in a bank vault somewhere, not on the street, dealing with workforce training, building capacity, or helping give police and correction officers the opportunity and the resources and the tools that they need to actually treat people with mental illness. There is an old expression in politics, and it's certainly not my own, but don't talk to me about your values, talk to me about your budget. We're talking combined investment of nearly $1 billion this year, stuff that will actually make a massive impact in your lives. But at the end of the day, it's not enough. It's just a start. And the only way that we are truly going to get to where we need to be from a public policy perspective is if people like you, like the high school students who are here, are willing to keep telling us what you need. That's why I'm so grateful that so many of you were willing to do just that. So sincerely, thank you. On that note, turning it over to Riva, right? Who's going to speak about the student perspective. Thank you very much.
Hello and good afternoon to everyone in the audience today. As Representative Mike Schlossberg mentioned, my name is Reva Gandhi and I am a graduating senior at Parkland High School and have been a student in the Parkland School District for the last 11 years. Today, some fellow students and I had the distinct opportunity to speak with Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro about the paramount issue of mental health. As a student and a young person in our community, I know I am personally grateful for the proposed investment of $500 million in resources in our schools over the next 5 years. The most important aspect of this investment in my mind is the concept of the flexible dollars that schools can use to meet the unique needs of their students and staff. The reality is simple. Not every school is starting from the same place of development. And further, not every school requires the same set of resources and development for student assistance programs. As my principal, Mr. Davidson, mentioned, there are resources in place currently in place for many schools, all of which are being used to their capacity for the benefit of our students, which is extremely positive. However, in order to build out a comprehensive system that works to the benefit of every single Pennsylvania student in the Commonwealth, we need flexibility and implementation that will create those regionalized plans that are specific and that work. If we want our mental health programs to reach a wide variety of students, then the plans themselves must also be individualized. This is why I'm incredibly happy that our governor was able to meet with some students today. Integrating student voice and perspective is personally of utmost importance to me, since these are the programs that will be impacting us. We are the students that, after all, go through the homework assignments, the tests, and the projects for school, while also attending athletic practices, debate competitions, theater performances, and working jobs, or many jobs, of our own. With students doing so much and facing potential stressors in their own life, it is imperative that the Commonwealth supports them. It is extremely heartening today to see the potential that this proposed plan holds for our students. Thank you, everyone, for being invested in this journey with us. With that, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Governor Shapiro to the podium.
I want to thank Reva for her amazing words and her inspiring words and her great representation here at Parkland and her fellow students. The sky's the limit for you, and I'm excited to hear about your journey along the way. Senator Coleman, thank you very much for joining us for this important conversation. Principal Davidson, I said this to you privately, I'll say it publicly. It says a lot about a principal, about a superintendent, about a school district, that they want this kind of conversation to happen within the walls of their schools. It demonstrates a real strength of your institution. I want to thank you for your leadership. And I want to say a word about our good friend, Representative Mike Schlossberg, who is the leader in the legislature when it comes to dealing with the mental health challenges we face amongst our young people and everyone else across Pennsylvania. When we make these big investments, which we will make as part of this budget, and we drive out new programmatic changes to help people combat this challenge, it will be Mike Schlossberg's name and fingerprints that will be all over it. And that's a real testament to his strength in willing to speak up, speak out, and share his truth. And that's really what I want to spend a minute talking about, sharing truth. That's what I heard from the young people here today. Their willingness to speak so openly about mental health. Their willingness to speak so openly about their needs, their friends' needs, and the changes that they want to see within their school. That is really inspiring to me. And all of the data suggests that young people are in need, and that young people, frankly, are the ones that we need to listen to in order to guide our progress moving forward. Representative Schlossberg spoke about my budget. It was the first budget I introduced as governor, and a budget is a statement of principles. And one of the firm principles that I am standing on, that's the foundation I'm standing on, is that we need to do better by our young people. We need to combat this mental health challenge and crisis that we face in Pennsylvania. We're investing significantly in our 988 hotline. We're investing in our county mental health services that support so many people. And we're making an unprecedented, historic investment in our young people by setting aside $500 million for school districts to be able to draw down over the next 5 years to fund initiatives to deal with the mental health challenges in their individual schools. Now, before we wrapped up our conversation today, I asked some of the students around the table if they would be willing to do a voluntary homework assignment. I'm not sure as governor you have the power to give out homework assignments, but the principal kind of gave me the nod that it was okay. I want to hear from students here at Parkland and all across the Lehigh Valley about the things we need to incorporate in the programs, in the investments we make to actually help students in their time of need. You see, it's one thing to appropriate hundreds of millions of dollars. It's another thing to make sure that they're tied to common sense solutions that actually work. And from my perspective, the reason I wanted to be here today is because I think the answers lie in the young people who go to school here. And I want to hear from you on how to best make sure that those investments come. Over the course of the next month, lawmakers will finish negotiations on the budget. And I hope it's not lost on any of you. We have a Democratic governor, a Democratic representative, a Republican senator, all standing here today discussing an issue that we all know to be incredibly important. I think this issue transcends party lines and the silly politics that oftentimes divides us. And what we're focused on are common sense solutions to a pressing problem that we need to combat right now with the help of young people here in this school district. So I feel like my cup is fuller as a result of being here today. I learned a lot. I'm going to take a lot of this back to our team as we continue that work. And I want to thank the young people here for their willingness to engage with us in this important work. We're going to get this done. It'll have Schlossberg's fingerprints on it. It'll have my signature on it. It'll have the senator's vote on it. But it will most importantly have your indelible mark on it. And that is going to be a great thing for students, not just in this district, but in school districts all across Pennsylvania. So I want to thank you very much for your time today. And with that, Reva's agreed to answer any questions from the media.
Better than me, certainly.
There you go. Anybody in the media have any questions?
Yeah, I'm Lee Chris with the Morning Call. Not just is there like a, excuse me, sorry, I'm frazzled.
That's okay.
Yeah, so there is not only a massive need for mental health care, but there's also a very large and growing disparity in the availability of mental health workers. So as far as these plans or other plans for the future, where does growing the workforce into dealing with the burnout that a lot of healthcare workers and mental health care workers are facing?
Yeah, I think let's start with those who are doing the work right now in our schools, and then I'll broaden that out to answer the other aspect of your question. One of the students today suggested to us that teachers who are often on the front lines of providing a kind of immediate care that a student needs, the teachers require additional training. And that by no means was a shout at the teachers, but rather an attempt to be supportive of the teachers. That's an example of how we can make an investment with the current population that is performing these services. I thought that was a great suggestion. But you're right that we need to open up the pipeline and have more people doing this work, more school psychologists, more psychiatrists, more mental health professionals. One of the other things that I announced in my budget address is the formation of a higher education working group to try and work on how we actually are investing in higher ed, whether higher ed is frankly working anymore, how we incentivize certain positions to be filled through how we educate people in higher education. And we are focused on figuring out ways to train those people on the front lines that are so needed, but where we simply don't have enough people. Police officers, teachers, firefighters, mental health professionals, home health care aides, just to name a few. And so we want to figure out ways to utilize our system of higher education to both promote these fields that we desperately need filled and incentivize those who go into it with reduced tuition as an example, with loan forgiveness as an example. These are the things we're working on to try to open up that pipeline.
Rob Manager, 69 News. So I heard in your discussion with some of the students talk about the Safe to Say system, and also talk about this idea of false threats at schools. Earlier this year, I covered a situation where multiple schools across the Lehigh Valley ended up having to evacuate because of a false threat. And I'm wondering how much of this budget is going to, be targeted at identifying false threats and what might be done about that.
Yeah, I don't want to step on the Attorney General because that's under her jurisdiction. Obviously, I've served as AG. I'll share my perspective there. First and foremost, we're going to continue to fund the Safe to Say system, actually increase funding for it. It works. Students are using it. Over 100,000 tips in just the last 5 years. And again, one of those years was kind of shortened due to the pandemic. So we know it works, and we know that students are crying out for help. But we also know that in some limited instances, less than 2%, actually, I think it's closer to 1% of those cases have represented false tips, which are really disruptive. It can shut down a school. I know the Attorney General's office is working with local prosecutors to make sure that young people or others are held accountable if they issue a fake report, a false report on Safe to Say. We need to protect the integrity of that platform. I think there's some other technological things that are being done to the platform to try and shore it up. As an example, when I was AG, the dark web and a series of servers overseas were used to call in that false threat. A little hard to combat that, but they're trying to do what they can with technology to address it. I think, frankly, the answer lies in students rising up to their friend that may have issued a false threat and said, not here. This is a good place that we need to protect in order to get young people help. And so using students' voices to push aside those who are trying to wreak havoc on this system is going to be particularly important as well.
Hi, my name is...
questions for you.
I can ask Ray a question if you need me to. My name is Elsa Hodoreski. I'm with Parkland Trumpet, which is Parkland High School's newspaper. I was wondering how you're going to...
award-winning newspaper, I believe, right?
Yeah, you won some awards at state competitions.
When I get the TV station.
You did. That's right next to me here. I was wondering how you're going to address the problem of equity within this funding. Of course, districts such as Parkland have, higher amounts of funding, rather than some inner city districts that, of course, have less funding. How are you going to really address that issue and hit all aspects of students and ensure that students, who may not have these opportunities are getting, the right amount of money? Because cut blank money just across the board, the same amount to every school district is not going to be able to be used.
It's an awesome question. Equity is really important when we're trying to combat this challenge. And right now we don't have equity. You heard it just around the table before. At least some students were talking about the presence of school psychologists, in their school, but other students were talking about how they had none within the same school district. And so it's critically important that we gain equity, and the way we're structuring this funding is designed to do just that. So rather than just everybody getting $1, the dollars are available from a formula perspective, so it'll drive toward the schools that need it most based on the applications from that school district. So the local principal applies for that, local superintendent applies for that, and is able to disperse it in a way that's far more equitable than the system we have now. And I think we need to be really honest about what the data says. And I referenced this before. Young black boys and girls are 4 times more likely to contemplate suicide or die by suicide than young white children. That is simply a stat that is irrefutable from the standpoint of demonstrating the inequity, and we need to drive resources out to begin to address that. And the way we structure the formula in my proposal would allow it to be done in a more equitable way.
Time for one more. Yeah, last one, we'll run up against that one.
Governor Shapiro, how are budget negotiations going for education funding? And are you open, I know that you had level up funding at the current levels in your proposed budget. Are you open to having level up funding increase when budget negotiations are completed, hopefully by the end of...
We're having really, I think, productive dialogue. You saw really some important activity occur in the House of Representatives where spending bills begin. The House of Representatives positioned my budget for a final vote with some of their amendments of their priorities. I believe that'll happen next week when they return to session. It'll go over to the Senate, where the Senate will consider it. I've had really constructive dialogue with Republican and Democratic leaders alike. I think we are zeroing in on some points of compromise, and where we have some disagreements, the approach I'm taking is it's okay to not like my idea, but what's your idea? And the point behind that is, let's be constructive. Let's keep moving forward, and let's try and address these challenges. I think I've put forth a series of common sense solutions to some of the biggest challenges we face. With historic investments in education, more than $1 billion in new funding, I'll be anxious to see the House's imprint, the Senate's imprint, and then we're going to come together, and I believe we will have a bipartisan product at the end that senators and representatives alike will vote for with a bipartisan majority, and I will sign into law. I want to thank you all very much for being with us today. Okay?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
First, we have to let our
I'll get back.
Thank you all very much.
I'll get back.
Thank you so much.
Good job. Thank you.